ladies and gentlemen, for this, we are joined by two eminent speakers. First up, Dimitrios Psarrakis, the Financial Technology, Digital Transformation and Innovation Strategy Specialist at European Parliament. Well, Dimitrios is an economic and monetary policy advisor at the European Parliament. He's a financial markets innovator, a public speaker, and an author. Well, he's worked with more than 16 years in financial regulation, financial services, and corporate finance. He's ranked amongst the top 100 influencers in the area of RegTech and blockchain, and he's a frequent speaker in the top-tier universities, international organizations, the World Economic Forum, and the professional summits in fintech, RegTech, blockchain, ICOs, and the digital disruption of banking and financial sector in Europe, America, and Asia. Also joining on the other side is Cal Evans, the Managing Associate, Gresham International. Well, Cal, being the Managing Associate of the Gresham International, an international crypto lawyer and a government advisor with experience working in top law firms in both California and London. Well, few people have the technological, legal, and financial expertise need to tackle the cryptocurrency market, and Cal certainly is one of them. He has experience working with companies across the globe, including some of the largest tech companies during his time working in California. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, I present to you on your stage and screen two eminent speakers, Cal and Dimitrios, to take it forward with the World Blockchain Summit. Over to you, gentlemen.
So great stuff, Abna. Thank you for that. Thank you for that great introduction. It's always a mouthful whenever you get some fantastic speakers on stage. And look, thank you, first of all, to all the organizers and everybody that's making all of this possible. It's always great to be first on stage, first out, a lot of expectations, a lot of eager people. You're joining me here from not so sunny 1 a.m. California. And I know that Dimitrios is currently over in Brussels himself. So we've got two sides of the globe here. The best thing about a fireside chat, I always find, is to just kind of touch base and look at where we kind of are. I guess I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've experienced really quickly at a 10,000 foot level. It feels like we've got a massive topic to cover, and I think about 30-ish minutes to cover it. There's a real quick piece of housekeeping I do, and Dimitrios, I'm sure this applies to you as well. One of the things I say is I'm a legal financial professional, but I'm not your legal financial professional. So as you watch this, nothing we say is legal or financial advice. It's just this morning for me, the afternoon for Dimitrios, a good old fashioned fireside chat. Dimitrios, tell us a little bit about what you've seen over there in Europe, the European Parliament, what you've kind of been seeing and experiencing with the kind of RegTech scene, kind of, I guess, with a focus on crypto at the moment.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here in this very topical discussion. Before starting the conversation, I was wondering if it's a good or a bad year for blockchain in general. We can answer to this question in context. We had COVID, and COVID taught us that businesses, firms having a digital layer in the business model and the operational model were more able to absorb the failures of the supply chains and the collapse of the demand side. And the plan for European Union was, before COVID, to devote around 1.2 trillion euros in investments in green and sustainable investments. However, COVID taught us that digitalization of the market in Europe is essential for the European resilience, economic resilience. So much of what we have planned before COVID, before March, changed sharply. And we decided to direct a lot of amount of money in investments in the sectors like blockchain, artificial intelligence, data analytics, data infrastructures, 5G, connectivity. And we can understand now that the need for an enabling regulatory environment that will allow this transition to happen needs from our side a different kind of political perspective. not that traditional one. And briefly speaking, having all these wonderful plans, we used our time in COVID social distancing to create wonderful frameworks to enable this digital transition. Two of those is the MiCA, which is the Marketing Crypto Assets Regulation, and the other is the DLT pilot regime, which is going to enable secondary markets of crypto assets to be developed. This, in line with a wider EU data strategy and the EU digital finance strategy, compose the fundamental pillars for the transition of European Union internal market into a more digital and a more innovation-friendly environment. For the time being, we are experimenting on a framework we call EBSI, the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, which is a blockchain platform, permissioned platform that will enable nodes in the member states to upload public documents and link to each other in an efficient way. But we can speak more concretely on MiCA and crypto assets. I think the audience is more interesting about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's flipping that coin, no pun intended, from a lawyer's perspective. For me, that's really exciting. The EU has always been on the forefront of a lot of things. And we saw member states like Estonia, like Malta, take some really proactive steps very early on, which was really cool. Even from if we park the technology side of things and we just think, look, these are member states thinking this is a great opportunity to pioneer some innovation. And I guess even this week we saw, I think it was yesterday, France announced some pretty new stringent measures, I think in the wake of some kind of anti-terrorism measures that they've put in play. And it all forms part of this broader European perspective really quickly. And of course, we can't, within the next 12 months and the past 12 months, talk about the EU without talking about Brexit. And we've seen some great stuff come out of the UK as well. And while we don't know how the markets are going to look moving forward, whether there'll be synergy, whether there'll be competition, I don't think that matters, especially not in terms of crypto. But there's been some very cool things coming out of the UK as well. And I think what's nice is that, and I think you've seen this as well, Dimitrios, this domino effect we've seen where leaders like the EU have led the way. The US has slept. The US hasn't done anything. In fact, if anything, they've kind of been counterintuitive on this whole journey. And then we looked at countries like Dubai, for us, Paraguay, Labuan. We went there and we started developing some of the framework. And we've written some of the laws in these places. And their mandate was fantastic. It was something I've never seen before. And I think you've probably seen a lot more of this in your innovation cycle. It was, look, we want to be competitive. We want to bring these companies, this ecosystem to these jurisdictions. And I've got to say it, it's really exciting. You know, for the first time, regulators, legislators, politicians are listening. They're actually listening to what people are doing. I know the EU has a very, I refer to it as a ears open policy. They do take a point of listening to people. They have some great committees. But I think for the first time on the ground, I think for the first time, we're really seeing that in a kind of first, you know, the first guys on the ground dealing with it. We're seeing that new reg, we're seeing the new consultations, and that's so cool to see internationally.
Well, thank you, Kav, for mentioning this, because when we started this idea of blockchain in the European Parliament in 2017, during the hype, in a very conservative house like the European Parliament, that the average age of the people over there is about 55 or 60 years old. And the news all around the world were talking about money laundering, terrorist financing, frauds of ICOs.
Yeah, it wasn't a good time.
I had the very difficult task to draft the first blockchain resolution of the European Parliament. And the funny thing there was that we managed to vote for this blockchain resolution with 740 votes in favor. Only one was against, from the party of Nigel Farage, interestingly enough.
There you go.
The point over there was that we expanded the conversation. We made the people start listening that blockchain is not just about Bitcoin or ICOs. It's much wider. It's a wide business opportunity that European Union should be a global leader. What means global leader? Means that it was Trump years, and the common sense relationships we used to have in the Euro-Atlantic framework were not present anymore. And being sandwiched between the technology of the United States from the one side and the technology of China from the other side, it was of paramount importance to create a space and maybe step back from the common perception we had in Europe that we need global solutions. Global solutions means in practice that Americans develop the technology and Europeans come 3 years later and they regulate. Well, this could not work anymore. We need to create significant standards that will allow people to develop blockchain solutions in a trustworthy way, with high standards of consumer protections, with high standards of investor protection, high standards of privacy. So for Europe, it's a fantastic opportunity to enter into this space of exponential technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, hyper-performance computing, cybersecurity, and create a set of frameworks that will be per se a global competitive advantage, and create space for other jurisdictions around the world, in Africa, Middle East, Asia, that are also sandwiched between China and the United States, to adopt the regulatory framework of Europe, boost their markets, and provide to their citizens high level standards. This is true in every aspect of blockchain. We have already submitted reports on blockchain and international supply chains. We have in the pipeline this crypto euro idea, the digital euro, the digital euro, which is going to be a game changer if we adopt it in the next 12 months. And of course, this is a reflection of the Libra. Libra is not an issue for the European Union about the Americanization of the internal market. It indicated that even in a united market like the European one, the system of payments was absolutely fragmented. And this created huge problems for innovation, huge problems for remittances. Imagine that 18% of the European citizens, are unbankable. This is terrible. And we are not an African country or a South American place. So Libra was an accelerator of events for us, and forced Christine Lagarde, who is an open-minded person in this field, to move forward to crypto digital euro, programmable money, which is going to be used as for retail users, not just in banks. And we are in the consultation stage on it right now. Now, on the other issue on raising money, it's paramount importance to develop a framework that will allow the channeling of funding to innovative ideas. We have huge problem on this in Europe because the private equity structure is not as developed as in England. After Brexit, this is an issue. And of course, the banks are not designed for investing in startups. So ICOs and crowdfunding solutions are very important for that. So we had to enable this. Now we are in the stage of enabling this framework to run. We have already in place the crowdfunding regulation, And now we are working on the marketing crypto assets and the DLT pilot regime. Everybody speaks about the marketing crypto assets, but the sexy thing is the DLT pilot regime, because this is the one which is going to treat the tokens that qualify as securities and create secondary markets for it. So this is where we are standing. And of course, the regulation you see right now publicized in the European Union sites is not a final one. It's just the initial draft delivered by the European Commission. The European Commission sent one draft to the Parliament and one draft to the European Council. We will amend this regulation. We will make it much more friendlier. We will consult with the real market participants. We don't consider ourselves wiser than the market. So we come to you and we take your feedback on what we have to change, how we have to adopt it. And then we have the trialogues that result to the final regulation. I expect both the regulations to be completed in 2 years' time. It will take time. This is a problem. But we are sure that at the end of the day, we are going to have one of the most certain, institutionally certain, and regulatory certain environments for Europeans and for third countries to adopt and start working. A standard setter.
Yeah, and that's really exciting for folks that are watching this that may not understand the power that really has. One example that I always use is aviation rules. It's incredibly different, but actually, if you read the aviation rules for most of the planet, they were created by the European Union. They actually set the benchmark. And so the concept of creating a ground set of rules and regulations and them being dispersed internationally is really not a foreign idea. And you touched on a really important point back in when you kind of spoke about the sandwich between the USA and China and various other things. One of the things that the EU is obviously well known for is that position protection. And we've actually seen this as well a lot from other countries. I'll pick up on Paraguay as an example. Paraguay's biggest import is beef from China. And one of the biggest things they spoke about the entire time was blockchain development to basically track and monitor that. But they had no measuring standard. They had nothing. It simply doesn't exist. And it's great to say, well, we need it for the Chinese, and so we'll kind of build it to what they want. But as you and I know, in practicality, that never works because, and no disrespect to the Chinese who build their own ecosystem, their ecosystem switches like that. They suddenly decide something needs to change and it changes. Whatever your opinion is on that, for people like Dimitri and myself who work on the ground, that fluidity of movement isn't always a good thing. But the great thing about where the EU is coming from is that it's strategically cool because there's been test beds. So we take Estonia, we take Malta. That's great. Utility tokens. That was really exciting. I argue and I say Estonia is a great example of how it worked. Malta's a great example of how it didn't work. I then look at Monaco, that's just released its own security token laws, trying to develop that security token secondary market. Again, it's another test bed. And what it means is that people can effectively not try before you buy, but you can be ahead of the curve. You can try it. You can go and set up a company. And you touched on a really important point that I think a lot of people forget. And I actually consulted with the Libra project here in California on the early days. It's called something else. It was a very different beast. But essentially, everybody forgets they're harboring that in Switzerland. And I'm using the term harboring. The entire situation is Switzerland, which, politics aside and economic structures aside, is de facto part of the European Union. I say tongue in cheek, but economically, it's almost like one of the biggest companies on the planet, certainly the biggest user input company on the planet that's about to release its own, can't do that in the United States. It physically can't do it. It has to come to the European Union, and I'm using that, and I apologize for that. It's my terrible English geography. I think it's technically the Schlaffen zone, which is my terrible pronunciation, but it's part of the European economic ecostructure. And that's hugely important. Facebook's doing it there. It's already being piloted. So this is what it's all about. It's about that innovation, because if you boil that down, that's how this industry started. It started with where it was. It moved from utility tokens to integrated tokens to financial tokens to putting things on the blockchain to tokenized assets. And that's how it started. And that's what makes this so cool.
Mm-hmm. I remember one speech you delivered about how a lawyer should look like for the future, how a regulator should look like for the future. So this is the very first question a regulator should ask, a modern regulator should ask before start regulating technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence. Well, if I have something to share with the good colleagues that follow this panel right now, is go to the first principles. And I can offer two basic principles that every jurisdiction should adopt, including the United States, which already admits that they are 4 years behind us, and they want to speak with us in order to create regulation based on what we did. For example, the Congress blockchain resolution is a copy-paste of the European, and they did very well. The best way to flatter somebody is to imitate him. Well, two principles: technological neutrality and business model neutrality. You don't regulate the technology, you regulate the uses of the technology. You set the final outcome, and you say for the same kind of risk, same kind of regulation. But this is not enough. Blockchain needs also business model neutrality, meaning that the regulator should not favor a legacy business model over a new one. This goes as the fundamental regulatory approach of the European Union. We decided not to regulate blockchain. We have an architecture-based approach, and we don't favor legacy business models and legacy market participants over new entrants. This framework, along with very strict requirements on investor protection, privacy protection, and consumer protection, is going to give the momentum to blockchain technology to fly. And
I agree.
merge with other leading technologies, because blockchain by itself delivers a value, but it's the blend of blockchain with artificial intelligence and hyper performance computing, etc., that creates the real value.
Yeah.
And
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I'm a little bit more libertarian in my thinking from a personal perspective. I agree that hands-off regulation is very important.
Too.
Yeah,
I was too.
Yeah, and the consumer piece is massively important. And I think that regulators, in order to regulate this properly, need to accept that what's happened, and I've said this many times, that we are as a society looking to actually go back in time rather than forward in time. I use the example of, let's think back to when we walked around with literally gold coins. We decided how much something was worth. You and I did a private transaction. Here it is. And we're in a modern society. We need some protections around that. But what's great is we're going back to that. We're going back to that freedom, that economic freedom to do business. So you're right, legacy models don't work. And we have to be able to nurture those small companies. And I think for Europe, and Europe has worked this out, as you've rightly said, this is a monumental opportunity for startups, for companies to step away from that VC capital fundraising model that, stifles creativity. We've seen it time and time again. And it's an opportunity where you can say, look, I really like this company. I like this team. I like these people. I don't have to be a qualified investor. I don't have to be an accredited investor. But as long as I tick some boxes and I'm actually, I know what I'm doing, I can take part in some innovation. And that's seriously cool. So I think the message from regulators, especially from what I've seen, is, look, they've got to go into this open-minded, copying what Europe's got, taking it, moving it, great. But you and I know this is starting blocks. That's why Europe says it's 3 years away. That's why everyone says it's years away. This is starting blocks. And we've got to be prepared to be flexible. And as long as that happens, I think we're in for some really cool stuff.
I agree. The most important at this stage is to open channels and corridors and bridges of ideas exchange, because it's not just about America, China, and Europe. We see a wonderful innovation ecosystem emerging all over the world. Singapore, India, Taiwan, Middle East. It's important to start talking and create bridges of exchange of ideas and decide how fast and in how much detail we should go. Because when you start about thinking of a market structure and regulation about a new market, you have to consider in the beginning how broad your intervention should be, how fast your intervention should be, and how much detail. Well, if you ask about Europe, we have a very moderate view on this. We don't intervene fast because the standards should be set by the market, and then we need the knowledge from the market in order to step and provide some recommendations or regulations. We don't over-regulate, and we are issue specific because, okay, technological neutrality is there, but there are idiosyncratic risks in every single technology. And you remember DAO. And this is the huge discussion about DeFi. Why decentralized finance is not in the European Union regulations? First, we have to figure out if DeFi exists. At that point, you have an email, a fail-safe mechanism located somewhere that has to intervene. Even DAO had this.
Exactly. That's such a great point. We could talk about this for hours, but I think, and it has, Dimitrios, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Always a pleasure to hear you speak. I know the team have got a hard stop in about 60 seconds. So I think we've timed that perfectly, and this is a great opportunity to kind of step aside. But thanks. I want to thank everybody again for joining in. Thank you for listening to Dimitrios and myself, and thanks for having us here for all the team.
Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you, Dimitrios, for joining us and kickstarting the World Blockchain Summit, the global edition. It was great to have you both gentlemen joining us today. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.